How's it going, folks? Mark Moody here, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Vlog. And as you can see, we are still inside of my room. And for the most part, I've pretty much just been in this room the whole day, just working on stuff. I did, however, go out on a hike with one of my friends earlier. Took some pictures, now I'm back. Had some dinner, and I knew that I had to record a video, but I just couldn't come up with something to record a video about, and I really just didn't want to take the vlog with me today, and I didn't come up with the idea for this video until literally like 10 minutes ago, and I just wanted to record it now while it is fresh in my mind. So without further ado, here is another video where I'm talking about movies. So over the last couple months, I've noticed that I've just been watching more and more movies, and I've made a video or two about movies that I've watched, and I just talk a lot about shows and a lot about movies, mostly movies that I've been watching lately. A lot of my friends have kind of picked up on it and have noticed that I've just been watching a lot of movies lately, and I've talked to people about movies, ask them, hey, have you seen this movie? Hey, do you want to go see this movie? Have you checked this movie out? Oh, I'm really excited for this movie. I'm just all about movies for some odd reason at the moment, and most of what I've been watching has been on Netflix, but then I've slowly gone over to Hulu because I know Hulu's got some stuff going on for Halloween. I feel like Halloween is like the perfect time to be watching movies because it just helps you get in the mood of the season, and it's spooky season. So horror movies, that's of course what you want to watch, and I'm a huge horror movie fan, and that's really all I've been watching lately. But there's three movies that stick out to me that I've kind of noticed have a really common trend with each other. The first movie that I watched out of this list is called Fractured, and it's got my buddy Sam Worthington in this film, the dude from Avatar. He does a great job in this film. He plays a dad who gets into an accident with his wife and his daughter, takes his wife to the hospital, and then he believes there's some kind of weird conspiracy theory where the hospital is harvesting organs. His wife and his daughter go missing, and then there ends up being some crazy twist at the end where really they were never missing the whole time. But instead, spoiler alert, and I will warn you on this, once again, these are not comprehensive reviews, this is just my thoughts here on the movie. The whole movie, or pretty much a good bit of it, everything after the first 20 minutes of the movie is entirely conjured up in Sam Worthington's character's head. The movie made me flip-flop back and forth a lot. It made me think, is there really an organ harvesting operation going on at this hospital? Is it all in Sam Worthington's head? It was hard to believe what the reality in this movie was, and then it turns out that the whole thing is just conjured up in his head. It was interesting how they played off the whole movie to end up being in the main character's head. Hold on to that because for some odd reason that's a really common theme in these movies. The next movie that I watched was one that I've been dying to watch for a really long time, and I just never really got around to watching it. It's a relatively new film. It's called Ghost Stories. I think it was a British film. I mean, it was all British cast, all British actors. It was a really great film. Genuinely, I felt creeped out with this film. And there were plenty of parts, there were plenty of little spooks and scares that definitely got me. I wouldn't necessarily call them jump scares, but there were moments that definitely had me, shaking my head and saying all kinds of stuff if I was in that character's shoes. Our main character is basically kind of like a psychic debunker, and he tries to make a career out of it, and then his idol ends up saying, there's 3 cases that I could never explain, so there has to be something out there. Go and prove me wrong. There has to be something real. There has to be something supernatural with these 3 cases. So he ends up going out, tries to investigate those cases, interviews these 3 people at the center of those cases. They're very well done. Like, they're not hokey. They're not stupid stories. Like, these are genuinely creepy cases. I thought that was great, and the whole time I couldn't figure out, like, how was this going to end? I kept trying to think, like, how are they going to wrap this up? Is there an explanation for all of these stories? And the entire story, all the individual ghost stories, all basically of the entire film has been conjured up, and it's all just made up in his head. None of it really happened. It was all in the main character's head. And then we'll go to movie number 3, which was called In Extremis. Now, I thought that this movie was going to be like an end of the world kind of apocalypse sort of film, but it was not. Instead, it follows this dad who, you think at first he's going through he's dealing with some kind of sadness. He experienced some sort of loss. He returns to his family, and then these weird things start happening where, he keeps hearing voices, and then this crazy weird storm comes over. There's some dark figure that's stalking his daughter, and he's trying to prevent the dark figure from taking his daughter. Then he ends up at a hospital, and then that's when pretty much the whole film is taking place in some kind of purgatory. And then, once again, spoiler alert, you find out that the daughter, who's been there for a good bit of the movie, has actually been dead for several weeks, or I think 2 years, I can't remember, but she's been dead. She died of cancer, and the dad is having a very hard time dealing with it. Basically, you figure out that the entire story, the bulk of this movie has all basically taken place in a purgatory. The dad tried to kill himself after just basically not being able to deal with the grief of the loss of his child, but still, the whole movie was in his head. Why is this a recurring theme in movies, and specifically with horror movies, or these psychological horror movies, or these supernatural horror movies, where it's all just in the character's head? I understand that there's something to be said about we don't know if our own reality is reality, and we don't know if we can trust whatever people think, or we don't, the mind sees what it wants to see, which is a very common theme in ghost stories and actually in Fractured. At least a very good chunk of the movies that I've watched lately, especially, horror films, a lot of these newer ones too, they've all taken place in the main character's head. As a viewer, as the audience, I like it every now and then, but I don't like it popping up in every single movie. Even, and this is pretty far-fetched probably, but there's probably some people out there who could agree with this if you've seen this movie yet. Even Joker could be tied to this theme of it's all in his head. Spoilers once again, if you watch the movie Joker all the way at the end, when Art is in Arkham Asylum talking with the therapist in the room, even then you'll begin to question, did any of the events in this movie really happen, or was it all just conjured up? You don't know. And for that movie, and yes, Joker was a fantastic movie. I would not hold anything against that movie, but still, you could possibly make that argument that maybe the events in this movie never took place because it was all in his head. That's a neat theme to have. That's a neat little twist to put in at the end of your movie, but if it becomes so common in a lot of these movies, it kind of gets a little dull. And I'm not saying that, that whole twist, it ruins the whole movie, because for movies like Ghost Stories, there was a lot of other things going for that movie than for a twist at the end to just ruin it all. Trust me, there were so many other things in that movie. Same thing with Fractured. Honestly, Fractured made me very uncomfortable for the bulk of the film. The cinematography, the dialogue, all these different things about Fractured really made me very uneasy while watching it, and I thought that was insanely cool about it. Ghost Stories, once again, made me very uneasy while watching some of the scenes in that movie because they were genuinely scary scenes. In Extremis, honestly, I kind of knew it was coming because there were so many dead giveaways and there were so many things going on that just made me say, none of this is real. It's gotta all be in his head. It has got to all be in his head. Joker, however, that is a whole other can of worms. But still, as somebody who really likes horror movies, number one, I watch horror movies because I want to get scared. Jump scares, I'm not a huge fan of them, but if you do the scare right, yeah, I'm a big fan of it. But really, I think it all comes down to, I like the fear aspect of these movies. I like when they are presenting content or telling a story that genuinely makes me feel afraid or makes me feel a certain way, other than it's just slamming information in my face, just trying really hard to scare me. I don't like that. Presenting something to me that makes me curious as to why things are the way they are, or why the characters make these choices, why is the story unfolding the way that it is, and it's that fear of the unknown, the fear of asking, why is it like this? Like, what is going on? And then how does it all come together? And then for the movie to just come out by saying, it was in his head the whole time, it's kind of boring. It's kind of dull, and I guess really in a way it is sort of a smack in the face to the audience, because then at that point that's just a huge cop-out. At the end of the whole movie it ends up being a dream, it ends up being, a vision or whatever, none of it really happened. Then why tell me this story in the first place? Not saying that when you go into a movie you should be expecting to get a lesson on life out of it, but usually in some of these, really complex films, there's got to be something more than just, it was all in his head. And now when it came down to Fractured, Ghost Stories, and Extremis, as interesting and as good as most of these movies were, the major flaw that they all shared was they were all in the main character's head. Now, before I do close this out, I'm not saying that any of these movies were awful. Definitely go check them out. Take whatever I said about these movies with a grain of salt. These are definitely movies worth checking out. Maybe not in Extremis because it's pretty long, and out of all the movies here, that was probably my least favorite. But Fractured, awesome. Ghost Stories, awesome. Joker, out of this world, amazing. Go watch it if you haven't seen it yet. But I think for right now, that's pretty much all I wanted to say on these movies. Those are some of the movies that I've watched lately. I just wanted to talk about them. So with that being said, that is it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.